people of the Caribbean Isles, North, Central, and South America, which are the 10 tribes, which are the so-called uh, Native Americans and Latinos. They're Israelites. Okay, so when the white man came over, starting with Columbus, all right, then the conquistadors, then the Puritans and the Puritans and the Pilgrims. Okay, what did they do? They was just slaughtering. Okay, so it's nothing new. It's just y'all a bunch of bugged out pussies now, and now you about to go over there and you going to mess with these other nations, and it's gonna lead to your destruction. You never change, man. Okay, all the while bankrupting the country and their hometowns in the process. Regal's pitch that a draft would elevate, uh, alleviate these problems is ill conceived. As he even pointed out, having a draft does not necessarily mean that everyone called to duty would be required to serve in the armed forces. Who in their right mind would choose the armed forces in this corrupt, imperial climate if given a chance of community service? Or, of course, liberals like to think Regal's hidden argument is that a draft would actually discourage war by making people pay more attention to the wars enough to protest. Wake up. Which that's what's going to happen. Okay? You're going to get more people out there protesting against this war. But the thing is, it's set up through the scriptures by prophecy that this war has to come. So them going out there protesting is basically marking themselves to get detained or destroyed, alright, when martial law happens. Okay, so wake up. We can't even get Congress to vote for these wars anymore. The notion that the decision makers will actually give a shit about the people's will is laughable. Besides, we all know how they handle peace protesters these days. Despise their lofty rhetoric of fighting for people's rights in foreign countries. Stock up with fresh foods that last with a food direct aid. At this point, it seems the only thing that can stop these conquistadors is when soldiers start refusing to fight en masse. They and they only have the power to end this insanity. As Albert Einstein said, nothing will end wars unless the people themselves refuse to go to war. God help them find the courage and moral compass to end this tyranny. Which, those people, wow. Okay. This is Obama. This is scheduled May. So this is a couple months back, May 23rd, 2012. It says Obama executive order provides for future military conscription of Americans, which means a draft. Okay. It says it's okay, a startling aspect of Obama's National Defense Resource Preparedness Act, which it got passed in the bill. It's on the books now, it's law, and one which does not gender much attention during its intentional coverage was its multiple provisions for the compulsory service of American citizens for both military and civil purposes. The first provision details the conscription of Americans can be found in Section 502. The head of each agency otherwise delegated functions under this order is delegated the authority of the president whoever it be, to employ persons of outstanding experience and ability without compensation, and to employ experts, consultants, and organizations. Excuse me. Section 502, though non explicitly makes vocal provisions to forced labor of Americans with outstanding experience in whatever field they may be training. How can we be sure that such labor would be forced? Elementary local tells us that if someone of the authority were to appear a citizen and demanded their skilled labor without any pay whatsoever, that the citizen would refuse until a sufficient contract were negotiated. Alright. Were negotiated. Since the person of authority, in this case the Secretary of Labor, Hilda Solis, is conductor with the Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, under Obama's NDRP, is delegated the task of effective utilization and distribution of labor, section 601A3. It follows that citizens with outstanding experience will not abide such coercion, or whatever that word is. The fact that these circumstances would be unpaid essentially constitutes slavery of the individual by the state. The specialized labor that this provision calls for could pertain to anyone from doctors to programmers to engineers to chefs. The list is endless. The second provision, equally as chilling, can also be found in section 601. The Secretary of Labor, in coordination with Secretary of Defense and the heads of other agencies, as deemed apparent by the Secretary of Labor, should upon request by the Director of Selective Service and in coordination with the Secretary of Defense, assist the Director of Selective Services is developing policies regulating the introduction and determinant of persons for duty in the armed services. Emphasize added. Section 601 clearly makes preparations for the reinstatement of the draft and does not specify whether it will be in peacetime or in war. Only the very broad provision for the development of policy. The official text of Obama's executive order can be found on this website. Okay, I, for one, would rather be waterboarded and strangled up at Guantanamo than forced to kill innocent Iranian citizens for some impolitic old forensic propaganda. Please comment. So it says right there in section 601, where it talks about regulating the induction and defraudment of persons for duties in the armed services. Meaning what? That's part of that bill. Okay. It's not a bill anymore. It's law the NDRP, okay, just like the NDAA, the NDRP is part of law now, okay. So and that was hidden because that wasn't the main thing that was being pushed about the NDRP. It was being pushed basically saying that in the declaration of war or martial law, all your goods and all resources and stuff will be in the government's control. Okay. All right. So conscription in the United States is referring to what? The draft. Okay. Conscription in the United States has been employed several times, usually during war, but also during normal peace of the Civil War. The Cold War. The United States discontinued the draft in 1973, moving to an all-volunteer military force. Thus, there is no mandatory conscription. However, the selective service system remains in place as a contractual plan. Men between the ages 18 and 25 are required to register so that a draft can be readily resumed if needed. In current conditions, conscript is considered unlikely by most political and military experts. But this is probably old, okay? Then it goes into the history, you got the colonial time, Civil War, World War I, the interwars, World War II, Cold War, Vietnam War, okay? Such. You can read it. I'll post it. But that's basically what it is, the conscription in the United States. So that's talking about the draft. Okay, here's the bill. The H.R. 5741, Universal National Service Act. Okay, I'm just going to read the introduction or whatever due to this time because, Jake have short attention span, and which is sad because the time we coming in, you gotta know what's going on, man. Okay, all right, but HR 5741, okay, it says to require all persons in the United States. Oh, let me make it a little bit bigger. It says to require all persons in the United States between ages 18 to 42 to perform national service either as a member of the uniformed services or in civil services and furtherance of the national defense and homeland security, to authorize the induction of persons in the uniformed services during war times to meet and strength requirements of uniformed services and for other purposes. The other purposes which we got earlier is for what's it called, internment specialists. Basically, they'll set you up to be control over these concentration camps where they're going to be putting the people in there to indoctrinate them, or what they call re-education, alright, to make them take the chip. Okay, alright. It says in the House Representatives, July 15, 2010, Mr. Rangel introduces the following bill, which was referred to the committee as Armed Services. A bill to require all. Okay, I just read that. Section 1, short title, table of contents. Okay. Alright. This is Section 101, definitions. In this title, the term congressional operation has the meaning given that term in Section 101A.13 of the Title 10 U.S. Code. The term military service means service performed as a member of the active or reserve component of the uniformed services. The term national service means military service or service in a civil capacity that, as determined by the President, promotes the national defense, including national and community service and service related to homeland security. The term security, sector concern, meaning the secretary concern, means Secretary of Defense will respect the Army, Navy, Air